Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. In one of his first actions back in office, President Donald Trump required federal agencies to only recognize two biological sexes based on sex, quote, at conception. Although a judge blocked that executive order, things are still complicated at the passport office. Seattle gay news publisher Renee Raketty experienced this firsthand here in Seattle and spoke with other people experiencing it too. We'll hear from Renee in a minute, but first, let's get you caught up. If you're interested in the District 5 seat vacated by Seattle City Council member Kathy Moore, you have until tonight to file. Moore quit for health and personal reasons a year and a half into her first council term. The council's expected to choose an appointee July 28th. That person will serve until the November 2026 election when voters in D5 pick a replacement to finish the term. If you use DoorDash in Seattle, expect to start paying more for the service, though they won't say how much. The company says it operated at a loss in the city in 2024 and blames the increase on what it calls Seattle's extreme regulations. GeekWire reports the notice of a fee increase coincides with the implementation of new protections for app-based workers passed in 2023. Those protections include requiring companies to give a 14-day notice before deactivating drivers. And if you've ever wanted to tour a tall ship, check this out. The U.S. Coast Guard's Bark Eagle will be moored at Pier 66 for the next couple of days. It's the only active square rigger in U.S. government service. Tours will be available today and tomorrow. It's free, and you don't even need a ticket. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Back in January, Seattle Now spoke to Stranger Queer Culture and Politics reporter Vivian McCall about a sweeping executive order from President Donald Trump. That order, among other things, required government organizations to draft new policies about issuing IDs to trans and non-binary people.
This order is called the Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. And I really think the way to talk about it is that this is, in one way, a federal redefinition of sex, and it is also a way to legally unrecognize transgender people.
One of Vivian's pieces of advice was don't freak out, get calm, and hop to it, advising trans and non-binary people to stay calm and get proper federal identification before Trump was inaugurated. Seattle Gay News publisher Renee Raketty was one of those trans people. She applied for an expedited passport near the end of the Biden administration, only to receive a passport with a male gender marker after Trump had been inaugurated. After a judge blocked Trump's executive order in June, Renee has been attempting to remedy that situation, but it's left her without a passport as the U.S. State Department navigates new policies. Renee is here to talk about that experience and the experiences of others she spoke to at the passport office. Renee, really appreciate you coming in. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So you initially applied for your updated passport before Trump's executive order. Let's talk about what that process was like.
Yeah, it was very straightforward, actually. I just went to the Lake City Service Center. I presented my application. They, looked over my documents, took my money. Again, that was an expedited passport application. Then they asked, for me to present additional documents related to my name change. I went ahead and did that. And then, unfortunately, despite that being an expedited application, Donald Trump was inaugurated. And from that point forward, my application just ceased to do anything. It was just sitting there. So I didn't hear anything until February 12th when I got an accurate passport in the mail. It was just soul crushing to see, that M on the passport because it was not my truth. And obviously it was, basically dishonoring who I am.
Do you currently have an accurate passport?
I do not currently have an accurate passport. I'm currently waiting for my application to be processed, despite being told by a federal judge that they have to give me an accurate one. Haven't heard anything, but they have my old passport, so the inaccurate one. So I wasn't able to travel, actually.
So you are passportless.
I'm passportless. I cannot leave this country.
Wow. Okay. I want to make sure that listeners understand what we're actually talking about here. Why is it so important that you have an accurate passport that reflects the sex you are?
Well, obviously, a passport can be used as identification. Sometimes it's used in employment. When we talk about passport, most people think of travel. So obviously, when you're, speaking to a TSA agent, you want something that reflects how you look physically. Otherwise, it's going to single you out for exclusion, for additional screening. So this is a very serious matter. But also, a lot of people use this to get a job. A lot of people use this for identification. I know when I was checking into hotels, often I'd be asked for a passport. So this is something that I think as trans people we're expected to present quite often. There's also the added benefit of having a federal identification, especially when you're traveling across America, because, right now there's just a landscape of different laws that, say what public utilities I can use, whether I can use the bathroom or not. If I choose to use a bathroom in a state that has one of these laws, and unfortunately I'm not up to date, I potentially could be arrested, I could be fined. I mean, there are severe consequences just for using a restroom, So I would like to have a federal document that has my accurate gender on it, female, so I can present that to the authorities should it come up. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons why I think trans people need an accurate passport these days.
You told Cascade PBS that an inaccurate passport is a weapon. I want to talk to you more about that. Why did you say that?
Because when you present this passport and it's inaccurate, it's going to basically out you every time you present it. I mean, honestly, I don't think the clerk at the hotel needs to know I'm transgender. I don't think, my boss needs to know I'm transgender. I don't think my potential employer needs to know I'm transgender. I don't think anyone but who I choose to disclose that to should know that I'm transgender. And right now, he's presented me with a document that's basically going to out me every time I present it and potentially expose me to violence, A lot of people are traveling to countries, too, that don't have the best record on, transgender equality. And so the authorities there are not well versed. So they may do additional screenings that could lead to imprisonment or other things. So there's a lot of challenges that transgender people face in general. But right now, obviously the challenges are 10 times.
The stakes are very high.
They're very high for trans people. I mean, it could be our lives.
On June 17th, a federal injunction blocked President Trump's executive order. What did you do when you heard that happened?
I was very ecstatic. In fact, I was on my way to the office, and I did a UE, and I went to the Seattle passport office. Here's the thing. I already had, travel plans. I already had my itinerary. So I knew that this would be the opportunity for me to go to the Seattle passport office and request an accurate document. I did stop at the UPS store on the way there just to get some new passport photos. So I literally just showed up hours after this executive order. Unfortunately, when I got there, I had to meet with several people. There was a lot of different paperwork they asked me to fill out. And while I was there, of course, I met a lot of people who were in the same boat as me. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, they just said they were just going to put it in a box and, dust it off when they had more direction from the Trump administration.
Oh, wow. That must have been disappointing on that day.
It was very disappointing. Obviously, I was expecting to leave with an accurate document or at least have one before I traveled. But unfortunately, weeks later, I'm still without a passport at all.
Yeah. You mentioned you ran into people at the passport office who also probably pulled a bit of a UE to get there as well. Renee, tell me who you spoke with and what you talked about.
I met a lot of people there who are transgender, who are obviously trying to get an accurate passport. A lot of them had sort of more mundane stories about, needing to travel for a wedding. But probably the most impactful people that I met was a mom and her son, who was 17. He was trying to travel for a school trip to South America. And, all he wanted to do was do service for, impoverished communities. And the Trump administration gave him an inaccurate passport. Mom had applied in February and kept trying to get an accurate passport for him, but unfortunately wasn't able. And, she broke down many times because like me, she had to meet with several different people. And in between, I'd be trying to comfort her in the lobby.
Oh, you were trying to support her.
Absolutely. And it was just so hard, too, to see a young trans person have their dreams crushed just because of who they are. I mean, literally, we're just people's neighbors. We're your friends. We just want to live equally in society, have the same rights as you do. No one's requesting anything special, And I think being recognized by your government is critically important to, just the, feeling of inclusion in our society. When I got that passport that had an M on it, I was crushed. I felt like the air had left my lungs. I felt devastated because I felt like I had been erased by my own federal government. And, it was just a sign for me that this was just one, just the beginning of what would likely come, because I didn't believe this administration would jump so quickly into something so vile and so damaging to people's lives. We're talking about real people here.
You were surprised this happened so quickly.
Yeah, literally on day one, he passes this executive order basically defining, gender as male and female. As we know, gender is a spectrum. Scientists will tell you that it's quite complex, actually. And there's a variety of different factors, and obviously we don't have time to get into it today. But basically, at the end of the day, people have a right to choose who they are, and we have an obligation to respect that, I think. And however we got to this path, all of us, just want to live our lives.
I'm thinking back to the mom and son that you spoke with, and I cannot imagine what it must be like as a parent to try to support your child through this. What kind of message do you think it sends this young person?
Well, I'm really concerned about that because obviously transgender youth in general are at greater risk of suicide. And so to see a young person have their dreams crushed so young, what message is this telling him about what his future will look like under this administration? Obviously, as a parent, she's trying to protect her child, but this child is learning a sad lesson right now, and that is that there's a lot of misinformation about transgender people in general. And this misinformation is being weaponized against us. And people like him are going to have a hard time, just getting a job, being a part of society, getting accurate documents. I mean, this is just the first of many, I think, executive orders we can expect against transgender people. And there's so much inaccurate information out there that I wish, more people would take time to learn about us. We literally are just trying to live our lives. We're not here for any political agenda. We just want to exist in our communities.
Nonetheless, though, you have been thrust into politics, right? You have been thrust into politics, Renee, and I wonder what it meant to you to actually be able to support people in that passport office that day, because it sounds like you did.
Yeah. It was it was a little weird because at the end of the day, I was like, oh, by the way, I happen to be the publisher of the Seattle Gay News. Would you mind sharing your story? A lot of people didn't want to tell their story just because they were trying to live their lives, in society without having, so much limelight on them. And I'm in a position as the publisher of the Seattle Gay News where I really don't have a choice. I'm like, as the publisher of the SGN, you already are out there, and it's just that's part of the job.
You've taken your position.
Yeah, exactly. I just happen to also be trans.
Despite everything we've been talking about, the issues and the challenges, would you recommend that people try and go get accurate documents at this point?
Absolutely. So despite the fact that this federal injunction was issued in June, allowing all trans people the right to an accurate document, the State Department has refused to honor that. Very recently, though, the State Department has issued guidance to the passport offices and to its staff to issue these passports. And so I think this is a great time for anyone who's transgender who has an inaccurate document or whose document may be expiring within the next 10 years to run out and try and get an accurate document. This may be your only window. And so I feel like people should take advantage of it. There's so many good reasons to have a federal document that's accurate, that shows your gender, especially if you're trying to travel around America right now.
You're going to have to travel at some point, Renee.
Yes.
This situation has to be resolved. What do you plan to do next?
A lot of things I've been putting on the back burner. I think I'm going to go ahead and green light as soon as I get this accurate document. I actually had plans to take one of our journalists to Vancouver for Vancouver Pride coming up. There's a lot of different projects that I plan to green light.
You sound hopeful, like you're going to get this.
Well, I think our only choice as trans people is to be hopeful because the alternative is to roll over and hide under your sheets. And unfortunately, that has never worked for any kind of civil rights movement.
Renee Raketty is the publisher of Seattle Gay News and a person who needs a passport.
Yeah.
Renee, really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Seattle Now reached out to the U.S. State Department for comment on Renee's story. A spokesperson said the department is, quote, taking steps to implement the court order. Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Today's episode was produced by Vaughn Jones, engineered by Brad Loving, and edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Andy Hurst, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, Paige Browning, and Shane Mailing. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.